One Piece.
One Piece.
I I like the series. Luffy was cool. It's different than the anime for sure, but
Yeah.
it's they did condense a really long story into a pretty good like highlights, I think.
Yeah. Well, they kind of made it they made it worthy of watching it as a live action because they could have just pieced it together episode by episode in a real condensed matter, but um I think they kind of brought stuff from future parts of the arcs to like, more present parts, I guess, in a pretty good way. Like bringing all that Garp and Kobe stuff into the story. I thought it was pretty good because I feel like in the background when you watch One Piece, there's a lot of that stuff, but you don't really. It's not. It's in the back of your mind if you're watching a lot of episodes. But if you're only watching eight, you kind of have to force it in. But I think it was pretty good.
Yeah, it was smart to bring them in because eventually, um, I mean, spoilers if anyone hasn't seen it, but eventually Garp and Luffy have a confrontation, and
Yeah,
they set it up nicely when that happens.
yeah,
Yeah, it was really good. I thought they did a good job with Garp. I thought he
yeah.
was a good actor for that
I
role.
didn't like his hat. The only thing I didn't like his hat. I was seeing him more of having some sort of like actual fur bearskin type hat, not like some little funny little hat thing. But aside from that, it was pretty good.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too. It's been a long time since I have seen the actual anime. So, does he have a hat like that in in the anime?
Yeah, his hat is more like as if his head is inside of, I think, a dog's mouth. And here he just has like a little little hat that's like a kid would have. Like it looked more like a prop, but that's fine. Some people
Yeah,
kind of justify it because it's like, oh, it's supposed to be like a goofier thing, but yeah, you know.
it does make him look goofy. But there were those some of those strange elements which I thought didn't fit. Like there's another character who has whiskers,
Okay.
and that one I was just like,
Yeah.
okay, I'll buy it. But it took me a while.
Yeah. The one thing that got me overall with the characters was their hair. I don't know if you found that, but like everybody's hair was very bright. Like Kobe's was bright pink or purple, Nami's was bright red. They could have done some more natural kind of color that made it look more realistic. Um, I know a lot of people were complaining about it, saying they kind of look like cosplayers.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, that aside, it was pretty good. I know some people had different thoughts about Nami's fight scenes because some of them should have been Luffy or Zoro, but I think it made it a higher quality by having Nami do the fight scenes at first and then having the big fight with Zoro and Mihawk. That was
That
yeah.
was really good.
That's
I
another
really
one.
thought that was
Yeah,
a good scene there.
yeah, yeah. No, Mihawk was really well done. That's one character that
I think they pulled him off really well, like with the eyes and the sideburns and everything.
yeah, yeah,
The, I mean, the hair is so hard. Like,
yeah,
how do you make it realistic, but not too like cartoony? So I think they just opted for dyeing it.
yeah.
So I
No,
guess it works.
yeah, no, that was great. And they cut out Don Krieg, one of the earlier, I guess, villains in the show. The one that gets Luffy his bounty, I think, is Don Krieg, and they cut him out. But he was kind of, when you're watching the story, he's the first villain. But when you think about it, like the first real kind of pirate villain that has a bounty, right? When you think about it, in the grand scheme of things, he's kind of filler. Like Luffy can just get his bounty from doing Luffy things. So I'm not too mad about that. And yeah, and all that buggy stuff, the CGI was pretty good. The acting was amazing.
Yeah, Buggy was like really well done. It was so over the top, like he is in the anime too.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, I was impressed with that. And what I it was actually hard. The first like 20 minutes of the show, it was kind of hard getting into. I was
Yeah.
getting used to it. It's like, okay, so he's gonna go into a barrel and just kind of go out to sea.
But I think it kind of, you know what? It kind of answered that question because when One Piece started, you don't really know how he kind of got into the barrel. He's just kind of in a barrel. And there it's like, oh, his ship is sinking. He gets in a barrel. But then the thing that I would have liked to see is the people on Alvida's crew fishing him out, thinking it's, gold or something. And then the whole bursting out of the barrel scene. That would have been awesome to see, but you know,
Yeah,
it would have probably drawn out that by another episode. So
yeah, yeah. On Nami's fight scenes, I think it was smart because if I remember correctly, in the anime and manga, she kind of gets into fights later on, and like she has that stick, right? That comes way later on, but they just brought it in immediately.
yeah, they had her do some of that stuff in the Arlong fights in the small arcs. Um, yeah, the but it was kind of at first it was kind of weird watching her do those early fights with Luffy and Zoro and the camera just panning on her. It's like, no, I want to see, you know, Zoro sword play and a couple punches from Luffy, but I know it's hard to animate the rub or do the CGI for like the rubber.
Yeah, maybe it was a budgetary decision. I'm not
But you
sure.
know what? They made it look great. I'd watch the second season. When I found out that Netflix was playing with the fact that hey, we need X viewership to get a season two, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go watch a couple episodes next week just to make it happen.
Yeah,
Because I think it was pretty good. I honestly think that what they did was, you know, eh, they had the budget. They were like what 3 million over what Game of Thrones had per episode.
I would say it's the best live action anime adaptation I have seen to date.
Yeah,
Um,
I've never seen a good one, and that was a good one.
has there been one in English, like a series?
I think there's another one on Netflix for another show. Honestly, like, I can't really remember them. They're not memorable for the other ones.
Like I've seen the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood one, but that one's dubbed because it's originally in Japanese.
Yeah.
And there was a Bleach movie a while back. Yeah, I don't know, but this one's in English too. It was easy to follow. Everything
Mhm.
was awesome.
And I kind of like how I don't know if you caught on, like everyone has kind of different accents, which is kind of I like that because in the One Piece world, everyone's kind of from a different place, right? To get your British accents, like I think Luffy's supposed to have like some sort of Brazilian type accent, and just bringing that all together makes it feel more like the One Piece world, I guess.
Yeah, I thought yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and it kind of like with other characters, it makes it feel like anybody from around the world can watch it in English, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they did a good job with Zeph and Sanji.
Yeah.
I thought that worked well. He works well with I don't exactly know what accent it is, but it's somewhere in the UK, I think.
Yeah. 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 But the whole stranded part with on the island, that was good.
I liked young Sanji. It was that kid was like super hyped up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, what the hell? Why'd you get all the food? And meanwhile, he's eating his leg.
You ate your own leg. Why? That was so funny.
But it
Yeah.
goes back to the whole like future part of the show, the young generation of the future. Zeph sacrifices his leg, Shanks' arm.
Yeah.
Uh, I would have liked like Shanks as a character, he was pretty good. I would have liked the whole bandit part to be a bit more clear when Luffy gets abducted. Um, but yeah, no, aside from that, it was good. I'd watch another season.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And the snail phone was good. They kept that.
and the snail phone's interesting.
I think that was a good decision because it's just so weird. It's just like because like it's it's an indication for the audience that don't take this show too seriously.
Exactly, exactly.
Let us be a little goofy. We're real people trying to make an anime live action.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, it looked weird, and then you got people's faces on it, the hair and everything. But yeah, no, I agree.
it's good.
Yeah.
So I guess moving on. I thought we could talk a bit about kind of your work a little bit because when we used to be roommates, you went to carpentry school pretty much, and
Yeah, yeah.
you've come. It feels like it's like
Along
all
it's been a while.
different. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just
No.
tell me about that. How did you go from carpentry to where you are now?
It wasn't easy, you know. Um I started with the what did the 3 years of trade school, started the apprenticeship. Um, and I just kind of got lucky, I guess, getting going from trade school, carpentry, engineering. It was right before COVID hit. I just kind of had this weird feeling, made a decision. Um, upgraded, did all like the college upgrades to get into university. It took a lot of effort, but I just it just clicked one day. I just said, I gotta do this. I don't know why. I just decided that I had to do middle of, I guess, the summer when COVID hit. I was working on walls, roofs. We just moved from, I guess, from Perth back to Ottawa. Um, and it was a good experience. And then I started engineering. Didn't quite know what I was going to do in civil. There's a lot of civil. There's buildings. There's lots to do. Um, and with COVID, there weren't really many opportunities. So for me, I just said to myself, there's nothing to do, just kind of. And so I did some estimating. And one year, I worked for a company that did ice engineering for dams. That's quite interesting. We build intake protection structures. We get these big pontoons. Think of like um, Think of like when you go to like the beach and there's those little buoys that hold everything
Oh yeah.
together or hold people in. Well, imagine you have buoys that are maybe, or little pontoon buoys structures that are about 100 times the size and prevent things from. I got a lot of like hydro experience, structures experience from that. And then after that, I worked for the RCMP, worked on radio towers. That was a really interesting experience. I know the RCMP has a lot of different raps in the news. You know, everyone has a different opinion, but if you get the chance to work for them, or anybody who doesn't know if they want to work for the federal government for an organization like that, they're really great guys to work for, and I'd recommend it. I'd go back any day. But they're a little bit outside of my domain of civil engineering. They have a different kind of profile of people that they hire, but it was really good. And so I guess moving in the last year, I started focusing more on like city type engineering, like municipal civils. So building on all that, I got a job as an EIT, engineering training, with the city, doing coordination management, project administration. And actually, it's funny enough, my fourth year capstone project in its entirety is what I do for my job. So starting, yeah, right. I've never heard of anybody really do that. So yeah, so I guess when I was in fourth year, my capstone project was we had this big landfill in Montreal, somewhere around Montreal, and we had to do this thing called a landfill reclamation project. The project is about closing a landfill site once it reaches its capacity. And in this case, the way the capacity works is you can have a certain height of what I would call a garbage mountain, but landfills and dumps are kind of different. But they reached their capacity and it was set for closure. So closure means kind of reclamating the land to its original state or a usable state. So what we did is we kind of engineered the settlement of the ground because landfill is just a bunch. It's a bunch of stuff with air voids that are decomposing, right? So, you might have a giant mountain of it, but after 10, 25 years, it might be half the size. So we came up with a solution to turn it into like, an outdoor skating trail, motocross park, bike trail, kind of like a park that anybody could use. Like I know in a lot of cities, there's like a dedicated outdoor space where people can go. There's ponds and stuff like that. And that's what we did. We made it kind of mixed use, accessible. And we applied pretty much all the principles of engineering into that project. And it was quite useful because coming to the city, I pretty much I have I don't want to call it portfolio, but like I have a portfolio of projects and each one of those are directly related to what I did. So, um, so yeah, so what I do is I work in capital projects. So if any city department has work for us to do, we kind of do the management, engineering, administration, and coordination to get it done.
Okay. So I want to get into your time working for the RCMP, but since we're on this topic already
Sure, sure.
about landfills, I've always been curious. So my very limited knowledge is that a landfill is basically, you have a plot of land where all the whether it's residential or like industrial waste will go,
Yeah,
and it will have a capacity, and once the capacity is full, you can't put any more.
yeah.
But I'm curious, like you say, if it takes 10 plus years for this heap to go down in size,
Yeah,
then does that mean you have to wait for that height to reduce before you can reclaim it and do whatever?
kind of. It depends what the use is, right? So generally there's different things that you want to do. Like you want to make sure that there's no contaminant seepage. If you put trees or whatever, you don't want to have deep rooted trees because you don't want them to absorb all the contaminants and then release that into whatever environment. So it's a touchy subject, but there's a lot of things that you can do. You can cover it up with engineered covers, land covers. It's a composition of materials that kind of protects the surface from the subsurface. This specific landfill site, what they would do is they would redistribute the landfill gases to the people or the residents, or they would give it to like some pulp and paper mills for like half price, for example.
Mhm.
So in terms of settlement, there's different ways you can do it. What construction sites sometimes do is they do this thing called preloading. They just add a bunch of material on top to get it to compress faster. Um, there's wick drains. There's a lot of different types of things that you can do to accelerate it. But what we went with the approach of kind of excavating the top, covering it with a preload, and then we kind of dragged out the whole process so that it would be in the final phases. Because typically the initial settlement, the bulk of it, say the landfill is like 40 meters, you could get a good 10, 15 meters in a relatively short period of time. And then after that, it's like 50 to 100-year time frame to get the rest of it. And once you get to that 50 to 100-year time frame for the final phases, that's when you can start doing stuff. So a lot of these projects are very, very long term. They cost a lot of money, but because they're so long term, it's easier to plan out and to engineer because you're not working with really tight constraints.
Hmm. And the landfill itself, like is it just a hole in the ground, or would there be some kind of layer between the earth and the landfill's waste?
So I guess to better answer this, there's dumps and landfills. So dumps are typically just a pile of garbage or a hole in the ground with garbage. A landfill is an engineered structure. So it's
Oh,
so essentially there's different you work with different types of parameters. So when you have like a slope or an engineered slope, you have to assume some sort of base condition. And in a landfill, it has like a trapezoidal kind of slope at the
mhm.
bottom, right? You can have a round slope, you can have a square, like whatever you want, but you have some sort of base kind of for the whole landfill. And then what they do is they take, say they get municipal or industrial waste, they place the waste in waste lifts so that they can get a more controlled kind of earth structure. So you could have like one lift be the fall 2021, and then the next lift the winter 2020, whatever. And then they monitor it. They insert gas collectors, piezometers, all that sort of stuff to monitor the structure, and then they build it up. And then based off of that, then there's a lot of other things they can do. They can add these things called gabions, which is basically rock and wire mesh. They can use that to reinforce it or to help percolate whatever kind of water. And I guess landfill, the water, the liquid left from landfill waste called leachate, which is a very, I would say like toxic. It's the toxic juices, right? And that sort of stuff, it's just a brine. You don't want to touch that. And essentially that's the stuff that kind of keeps the whole environment toxic, and you really want to control that with like leachate pipes, um, or you can control it with different types of aerobic and anaerobic processes within the landfill itself. But no, it's interesting. There's a lot of membrane filtration techniques. Yeah, no, anyways, it was a really interesting project. I could go on for hours. Like,
No.
yeah, when I did that project, I ended up being the team lead, and
Yeah.
it's interesting when you working as a team lead on a big project like that, because I'm not necessarily getting into the fine details of everything, but I kind of had a bit of an oversight on every process, so I could talk about a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it's very cool because I don't have personal experience with this type of engineering where you're trying to control
Yeah,
waste output and leakage and things like that.
yeah,
But just knowing about the general processes of handling waste,
yeah, and
it's
it's
good to
really
know.
it's really complex. It seems, at first thought it's just a dump, but then it's like you got gases. What do you do with gases? You have methane, right? You want to flare that. To flare it, you have to control it, right?
Mhm.
Because you want to control emissions, and so on and so forth. But there's a lot that you can do with these emissions if you can control them. You can sell them back, you can burn them. Um, but yeah, no, interesting project. Um, really helped me, like I said, with my current job. Like all the hydraulics that I did in that project applied in city hydraulics, municipal hydraulics, working on storm systems, ditches, roads. I'm actually going to start a landfill job next year, which will be really cool. So yeah, no, A1 like that was a good project.
Wow. That's so cool. I have so many questions. Um, I think I'll just leave it for now though.
Yeah, it's wild, it's wild. And like I can't, like, from what I can talk about it, my experience with the RCMP, if you want to jump into that real quick.
Yeah, sure, sure. So the reason I'm so interested is because you mentioned radio towers.
Yeah, yeah.
Many years ago, over a decade ago, I spent 4 months working for Rogers as a co-op student.
Okay, okay.
And my job there was to help with the rollout of their 4G LTE antennas.
Yeah,
So they have like thousands and thousands of antennas on, hundreds of towers, things like that.
yeah,
So one of the cool things I did there was I used some kind of proprietary software to model antenna radiation
yeah,
and meet industry Canada standards. So, for example, you want to install a new antenna. Every antenna will have a radiation pattern lobe. So
yeah,
you can
yeah,
imagine like a tower in the sky,
yeah,
and there will be a lobe, which is just your radiation,
Yeah,
and it will get weaker as you move away from the
yeah, yeah,
emitter, right? So if you have a tower uh, really up high in the sky,
yeah.
then from the perspective of someone on the ground,
Hmm.
that's good because by the time that radiation reaches the ground, it should be at acceptable levels,
Yeah,
right? So I thought that was really interesting. I really enjoyed working with that software.
yeah.
So I was curious, what did you do with the radio towers?
So when I was there, I worked in a radio tower program. Um, I don't want to speak too much about it, be based off the organization, but if I can compare it to a radio tower job I'm doing with the city right now, funny enough, um, essentially what I did when I was, both there and here is we work with companies like yours that would do those types of analysis for equipment and so on and so forth. And we would have like a basic need. So we'd have like say like with the city, right? We have some sort of catchment, and we want to have some sort of range for each tower for your uplinks, your downlinks. Um, so what we would do is we would give our consultants, someone like you, hey, this is what we want. We have a budget. Um, this is what we want to serve, right? The people we want to serve are the utility. And based off of this, we need coverage. What antenna should we use? How many antennas? Um, and then the big question is if we put up a tower structure, what's its intended use? So right now I'm working on a fire tower, and the idea of this fire tower is to have it for one set of equipment and potentially add another set later. But what we don't want to do is build a tower too beefy, so to speak, so that other people might ask us, hey, can we put our equipment on your tower? And that's where it kind of gets tricky because we, like you said, we might have someone like Rogers or Bell approach us and ask to put equipment on our tower, right?
Yeah.
And what we want to do is build like an emergency like infrastructure for the municipality without incentivizing others to take advantage of it. Or if say somebody came and put some sort of antenna on our tower, right? We would be able to know really quickly, hey, our tower can't support this because the towers they're, if you know anything about wind loads and moments based off, engineering mechanics, is that the more leverage you have, the easier it is to tip something over, right? So
Mhm.
if you have 100-foot tower and you've got a wind gust, right, going against it, and you've got a dish that
Yeah.
is, 10 or perpendicular to it, based off of how big the dish is how much your tower wants to rotate or flex, right?
Yeah.
So these towers are built exactly or within some sort of factor of safety, to withstand a certain amount of equipment. And if you add equipment, it might cause a tower to break. So I guess what I did there is I did very preliminary analysis. There's connection engineers, structural engineers that take care of this. But what I was more concerned with is the foundation.
Mhm.
Um, so for me, I looked at electrochemical degradation, and then right now with the city, I look at building the whole profile, but I verify the specs for the foundation.
The foundation meaning you just want to make sure the tower stays up and it can withstand extreme weather conditions and
Exactly. Well,
its use. Yeah.
because the way I guess in structural engineering, there's the superstructure or the structure, which would be the metal itself for the tower, and then the base of the tower would either be it would be the foundation, right? And so there's two branches, there's structural and geotechnical, and in this kind of facet, that's where they both meet. So oftentimes we either only have structural engineers or only geotechnical engineers, and sometimes it costs more to have both. So sometimes if we get a structural engineer with a previous geotechnical study, we can do our own verification to see if everything meets requirements. And when I say foundation, I mean like the concrete, right?
Mhm.
So do we want to have like pylons or piles, I would say piles which are basically cylinders going into the ground on some sort of concrete mat. Do you want like a footing? Like there's a bunch of different ways of putting it. But then once you have a powered tower with a concrete foundation, concrete has water in it, right?
Mhm.
And you know, if you know about concrete, there's silica in it, right? Silica,
Okay.
silicon, so can hold some electricity. So when I was working, I would also look at the electrochemical degradation. I did some preliminary analysis to look at it and to look at different ways to mitigate it, but essentially the tower foundation and the steel itself can corrode just by having straight current.
Right.
And that was a really interesting topic because, what we can look at is putting electrochemical cells. Essentially, we just get a bunch of batteries and stack it under and around the foundation of a tower.
Mhm.
And just doing that can increase the life by, say, 5 years, 10 years.
Yes. Are
Yeah.
those batteries connected to the concrete?
Um, in some way, yeah, because they have to take the electric charge. But
So
and
you're just trying to displace the charge from the foundation into the batteries.
exactly, exactly. And the way it works is you also want to make sure that the battery or the electrochemical cell doesn't degrade itself. So you have sacrificial cells and then you have padded cells. So say you could have 3 cells in the middle and 5 cells on the exterior for whatever reason, and then you've got your grounding and everything. And from having all of that, right, it should be good enough to take care of all the straight current.
Wow, that's so cool. I had no idea, I never would have imagined you'd need batteries around a foundation for a tower. That's
Right.
crazy.
And this comes on higher power towers, right? There's different types. There's basic towers for basic needs, but yeah, on some towers you could definitely need some. Well, it's not a need. There's a lot of wants, but then when you do a cost or a life cycle analysis, these costs add up. So, you could have a basic tower and you replace it every X amount of years, or you could beef it up and spend a bunch of money up front and not have to maintain it as much.
Yeah.
So the question's always in maintenance, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that would make sense. Especially if you consider the use case. So if, for example, if it was an emergency tower, you would want it to be, well, it would probably be high power. That's my
Yeah.
guess,
Yeah.
because you want to have the capacity to transmit over longer distances,
Yeah.
especially if it's like extreme weather, your transmissions will also be affected and it'll be kind of choppy. So that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
I
Wow.
mean, funny thing, like aside from the weather part of it, but extreme temperature is good for power.
Cold or hot?
Cold.
Cold, right? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it
So
keeps it cool.
yeah, well, you have the more that you have a differential, the better contained uh the current is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
mean, because like the electrons will be traveling slower in colder temperatures anyway.
oh,
So,
well, that too.
right?
It's more actually about the losses, right?
The losses.
Yeah. I took a course at one point. I took when I was an undergrad, I got to take one grad. Well, I took two hybrid grad courses, and there's this one. It was a climate change course, and we had a whole month and a bit about power. And we do these dark energy calculations, and well, not dark energy, like dark current versus light current. And it was interesting. When you plug everything into those calculations, you see, okay, you want to minimize the losses from the transmission. And that's I never thought of it that way. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. I it's funny. It's kind of coming back to me because I remember studying like power systems, and there's always a transmission loss when you're going through cables and wires and things like that. So yeah, you're right. That makes sense.
Yeah, because it's over distance and then distance considering the temperature gradient.
Oh, oh man, that I remember studying it, but it's just like once my course was over, it's all gone.
There's a couple things I retained from that course, and that was one of them. It's one of those for me useless pieces of knowledge, but it's a piece of knowledge though. But yeah, no, it's towers are really cool. I think towers are really cool. Yeah,
Yeah, I really enjoyed that work experience. Probably not so much at the time because it was like
yeah,
kind of doing the same thing over and over again, but now you can kind of appreciate what you're doing, you know?
yeah. And when you guys were hooking up 5G, was that kind of like at the beginning when nobody really knew about 5G and you guys are doing some preliminary tests? Because when I'm working on towers, it's more, I guess, there's a larger rollout of that sort of stuff. And at least on the municipal side of things, again, a reason why we limit our tower to just the emergency equipment so that those companies like Rogers and Bell, they can build their own towers in their own locations.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I mean, when I worked there, it was over a decade ago. So it was 4G was the new thing. It wasn't
yeah,
even 5G.
yeah, yeah,
And I only spent 4 months there. So
yeah. Well, you know what?
I,
4 months is a good amount of time, like 4 months, like you can pretty much get the hang of a job within a year of working there, 6 months to a year. So 4 months, you're like at the 50 to 60% knowledge and training mark.
yeah, it was good. I really enjoyed. It was my first job actually, so it was nice. But yeah, it was just the 4G rollout there. Like it was a role that was very compartmentalized. So
Yeah,
my role was like a very small piece of their full rollout.
yeah,
So I didn't have too much knowledge in how they're actually being rolled out. Like my role was just um, check here's a tower site.
yeah,
These are the new antennas. Go into the software, do the simulations, make sure we're within the standards of Industry Canada.
yeah. And that's it. Like a lot of it's working within Industry Canada standards because it's, the standards are very complicated and intertwined. Like there's the nav can requirements, there's this transport can requirements, there's the ISED requirements, there's a long list of requirements that you have to meet. And say you're designing something, you can design a tower to a specific height, do all the analysis you want, and at the end, oh well, we want a shorter tower for X reason, or we want a taller tower. Go with the taller tower, you have to work within the airspace requirements. So, yeah, the regulations on that industry are quite tight, but for a good reason. If we didn't have tight regulations on that, we'd have Bell, Telus, Rogers, Eastlink, Cogeco. They put towers in every neighborhood if they could, because
Yeah.
that would effectively we would have omniscient or omniscient internet. It would be everywhere at all times, but we need the standards for the signals and the radiation and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, not only that, but they're an eyesore in a lot of places, or
Yeah, yeah.
even if you put it in the wrong place, it could affect birds that are traveling. It's wild. I can't believe there's so many considerations on that.
And I feel like I got kind of lucky with the tower jobs I've had so far. I've always had the jobs where it's in some sort of farm field, cornfield. Nobody's really around. I've seen some jobs where you have a big monopole, like those white ones with a
Yeah.
ton of equipment. Yeah, I haven't worked on those ones yet. I've only really worked on the cheap guide towers or freestanding towers. So
That's cool.
yeah,
So you mentioned you're working as a EIT.
yeah, yeah.
Um, are you on the path to PNG? Is that something you're looking at?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, 100%. I want the stamp. I might not stamp. I might stamp once or twice. I'm not quite sure, but I want it. I'm on the path. Do what I can for it. Yeah,
That's so exciting. I was on the path, but at this stage, I am no longer on that path because I'm not really doing engineering work.
yeah,
I'm doing a lot of like software testing, and I
yeah,
really do enjoy it. But I did write the exam for a PNG.
Yeah, yeah,
So I know you got to do that, and then you gotta. I I don't remember how many years it is, but you got to have 2 or 3 years under a PNG yourself.
yeah, yeah. You gotta have four
Four.
nowadays. Yeah, it's a lot. I've worked for some older bosses where they've only had to do two, and
Yeah.
they do their statistics of when catastrophes or failures happen. I understand it, but it's harder for younger people to get in because once you have the PNs, you can actually start an engineering business. You don't have to work for someone kind of forever.
Mhm.
But yeah, for me, it's kind of it's I work under I work in a department that has an engineer, but I'm not directly working under an engineer. So a lot of companies have like, for example, Elliston, they've got like mentorship programs for coordinators. Um, like for myself, I'm lucky enough to have an engine. Well, we actually got a second engineer in our department, got two PNGs. In the infrastructure side, I work on capital projects, so I'll eventually get it. Just have to keep chugging along, but yeah, no, the PN is definitely something I'd like.
That's awesome, man. I hope everything goes well. It's you obviously are interested in the way you talk about your projects with technical detail and stuff like that. So
I I realized from college to here, I'm interested, engineers are interested in stuff, but not every engineer is interested in stuff. And that's kind of what kind of kept me going through it from day one to where I am now, is because, say I'm not doing stuff, or I try not to compare my, the one thing I try not to do is compare myself to other engineers or whatever you have it. But the one thing I have is, when I look at a project, I actually like the project. I say, cool, let's build a radio tower. Or cool, there's like a broken bridge. I'm not a bridge expert. I'll find a bridge expert and I'll get the project started and do the best I can. But I really do enjoy projects. So, you know,
I think that's what you need for a good engineer. And I have learned over the years that I don't so far I did a lot of projects. I didn't really have an interest in the project, but
mhm,
that's kind of why I've stepped away from that role.
mhm,
Like my so if you as an engineer were to design something and build a system for me,
yeah,
my the most exciting thing for me would be talking to you and finding out, okay, tell me exactly how this works,
yeah.
and then let me go through the whole system and then tell you what's not working. That's what I like about it.
Hey man, that's test engineering right there. There you
Exactly.
go.
Well, the reason I'm so hesitant to use the word engineer is because engineering typically means you're involved in the like designing a process.
Yeah, yeah.
And but testing is kind of like you're supporting the engineering process, but are you actually designing stuff? I don't think so. So
It depends. There's different ways to look at it. Like there's the QA, QC, right? And part of that is testing. So say you do have a process. A lot of processes have gaps in quality control. And I'm finding, in my job, in terms of road design and implementation, there's a lot of gaps. Um, we had roads where we had to say, hey, we're creating a process. We want a road to be designed to X standard. We want it designed to X parameters, and we want this to be the outcome. The thing is, when you engage with other engineers and you ask them specific questions, they'll give you specific answers. So creating some sort of framework based off standards or engineering to test if what they do conforms to what your outcome wants to be, to me that counts, right? Um, for example, I started implementing a QAQC um, guideline for road design and implementation. So I started finding that some of the roads that we designed were not quite implemented the right way. But according to the standard practice, standard guidelines, um, the the standard operating procedures, everything was going well by the book. So I started looking at some ASTMs, American Standard Test Methods, and I started, playing around with the ideas. Hey, what's going on in this process in the large scheme of things? Is the pavement done right? Is the ground engineering done right? And I found that every single phase of the project was in some way done right, but when you put it together, it didn't quite conform. So what I would do is I would implement statistical measures to say, hey, if we have X problem and we have a result that is on paper good, but in practice bad, how do I create a framework to evaluate the performance? So then I would start breaking up construction and engineering designs in a way to kind of pinpoint these problems. And then using this statistical framework, I was able to use like, coefficient of variations and different types of statistical methods to actually say, okay, this is done right, but if you break every element up, then you can find the incremental problems that on a scale from -1 to 1 add up to 0. But if you break it up into the left side and the right side, well, everything's still kind of at the extremes. So how do we fix this from here on out? So,
Yeah,
so that's kind of like testing, right? Creating like a little framework and you know,
that's that's awesome.
yeah,
The,
yeah,
to come up with the statistical method to kind of gauge the conformance of individual components versus the integrated component that's actually working or not.
yeah.
Wow.
And here my job in this case, like, was to coordinate like the construction implementation of this job. And in the end, I ended up doing a lot more. And at least for next year, when we go to redesign this road or whatever we're gonna do, we're gonna have a better basis to actually, implement this properly and create a longer lasting asset.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And that's road stuff, man. For me, roads and roads are probably my least favorite topic. And I don't want to say structures because there's a large range of structures, but structures and roads are not my favorite topic. But you know, I can make it work. I can the solution.
Yeah, you gotta you just basically have the philosophy. Yeah, if you pay me, I'll do it. Like
Exactly.
I'll do a great job. Just pay me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But yeah, no.
That's awesome.
Yeah, lots of cool projects with the city. There's a little bit of everything. There's always something breaking. Somebody always needs something. So end of the day, I'll get my PN hours and then hopefully I can start working on more interesting projects of my own.
Hmm. Anything you care to share coming down in the years coming up?
Yeah, I guess so. Right now, I'm attempting a master's degree.
Mhm.
Uh, Whenever I learn anything, I never say I'm in it or I'm gonna finish it. Um, I say that I'm on the path, and if I get to the end, that's great. Same thing with the bachelor's. Every time I'd finish a class, I'd say, great, I finished a class. It's not over until I have the paper in hand. Same thing with the master's degree. Um, you know, things are tough. There's a lot to learn, but my general outcome, if I can get the piece of paper, maybe some research in, that would be ideal. But for me, I'm doing a master's civil engineering and water resource engineering science, specializing in hydraulics. I actually really like hydraulics from my time working for that ice engineering company. And there are some opportunities within some city projects to apply this. So in the next couple of years, I'm actually hoping to, work on some studies, potentially some research. And if I get to that far in the master's degree, because I'm in a course based, but I'm hoping to switch into a research based degree. And actually, we have a project coming up that might allow me to do research. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And you don't really see academia and I guess professional work at like 2 for 1. So for me, this is kind of in the next couple of years, this might be a big thing, at least for me.
Um, So like what kind of projects would be involved in your specific field of study? Would it just be like how to manage water in a city kind of thing? Like how
I know
to,
there's a lot of different ways you can manage water. And I guess in my topic, water resources, there's a hydrology, there's the environmental hydraulics, there's the civil hydraulics. Um, there's a lot of projects that can get done. And for me, I'm interested in the hydraulics, in the municipal hydraulics, more specifically river hydraulics. That's kind of what I'm interested in. And the thing is, there's some topics that are just hard to get into until you get into them. And so what I'm planning, I guess if I give you a bit of a problem statement, uh, I guess year by year we have rivers that change the course or they change path. And this study is called the study of river morphology. And so in the municipality, we have a lot of roads that are right next to what we call meandering rivers.
well,
And we have one specific road that every single year we have to rebuild the asset. And typically this costs a lot of money. If you think about it, driving across a bridge or like an earth bridge just to restabilize the ground costs, maybe $100,000.
well,
So the question is, how do if we're paying that every year, do we want to maintain the asset? What's the need? If it has a really low use, like say one to 100 cars per day, you know, on that road, do we want to close the road and reroute it? There's a lot of questions that can be answered to save money. But for me, I didn't want the peripheral kind of, I don't want houses to be affected, other city assets to be affected. So for me, the question is how do I kind of control the river to not eat the road? That's the simple question.
oh, interesting. So like what kind of tools would be involved in that?
So there's modeling techniques, uh modeling river flow, channel hydraulics. Um, there's the field of study that I'm interested in is river morphodynamics and channel hydraulics. So, you know, I guess it'd be fluid mechanics, dynamics, creating models, using data modeling for, water availability for like a water balance. Geotechnical engineering, doing slope stabilities, and then creating a framework to implement a project that would mitigate bank erosion. Because essentially that's what's happening. You got a road, you got a river in the shape of an M that's kind of tangent to each bend, and the bends are eating into the road. So what I'm looking to do with the city is implement a project in the future that would essentially deflect the high currents from impacting the bend.
But how would you like actually do that? Would you put something in the water or would you
Yeah.
like yeah?
So there's a lot of methods actually. There's something like I said, gabion. I use gabion as a word. It's rocks in a metal net. You can do that. You can pour concrete structures to raise the bed and by doing that, you're controlling the flow around the bend. Um, then there's these things called veins. You can get boards out of wood, plastic, whatever. And actually, if the water's coming at a certain angle, you deflect it with a board. And to me, that's the cheapest option. There's other projects that use basically wooden spikes into the ground, like fence posts, and then it kind of dampens the direct current into the bank and it creates little vortices, and then you know then it doesn't. Yeah. So there's a lot of modeling involved in that. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm right now in the planning phases. But at least with the city, that it would allow me to, do a little study, research project, and there is an aspect of novelty coming with this project. Um, there's some ratios that I want to work with to try to find a new ratio that doesn't exist yet, and that's kind of my end goal, at least for now. So
Yeah, that is really cool because I can see how that would be very interesting because if you have, like in this example, you have a bridge or a land bridge or whatever, and then the river keeps getting closer to that bridge and impacting its integrity. You have to spend the money every year to maintain it. But if you can model the water coming to hit that land bridge and do something in that river to lessen the impact, then you could effectively, in one scenario, maybe decrease the maintenance time by
exactly,
a
exactly.
half. So like instead of every 1 year you spend 100,000, you could do it every 2 years.
And that's exactly my plan. And the thing is, right now there's well documented cases for bridges, for example. There's a lot of literature on bridge pier scouring, where basically if a current hits a pier, all the little vortexes that happen behind the pier on the downstream side eat the bottom of the pier. And then when the water levels increase and decrease, it's at a differential height, it just kind of eats it away until there's not much left. So bridges they build, I think what I would call some sort of buttress, which is kind of like an extra beefed out section. But on riverbanks, um, there are techniques, but like I said, there's some ratios that have not quite been worked out yet that I'd like to work out.
That's pretty interesting. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So that's what's in the works for the next couple of years. And I'm pretty grateful that I might be able to implement a study to actually tackle that with my job, because not every job can let you kind of go sandbox mode for X amount of time per day. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah,
That's amazing. Wow, yeah, you've been super busy
yeah,
last couple of years, and
yeah,
it's awesome to see you found something you really enjoy, and you have kind of a forecast of what you're going to be working on in the future too. All right, so you got into running.
yeah. So I guess over COVID, it was kind of hard to exercise. Well, I
Mhm.
mean, aside from going on walks and stuff, but uh, with studies, work, and everything, I found it hard. And this summer, when like as I've been working, I just said, I need to do something again. So I have a stationary bike. I can hop on the bike, do some exercise for like half hour push-ups. Got a little barbell dumbbell setup, but I wanted to see if I could still run like I did, before COVID. So I found that I could go on a couple runs, but if I wouldn't keep it consistent. So what I did is I just signed up for a race, signed up for the Army run, and I said, okay, every week I'm gonna be running at least twice a week until that date. And I did it. It was great. I feel great.
Mm.
Lost a little bit of weight, which I'm happy about. And yeah, no, it was pretty good. I ran it in half an hour, 5K half an hour. Not my best, but I did it. Happy I did it. Feel a lot healthier. And yeah,
Wow, that's great. Um, yeah, 5K in half an hour is pretty good. I think my best 5K was like 29 minutes.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, running is great. I run regularly, not so much these days. I do like once a week.
yeah,
I would like to do it twice a week. Actually, no, this week I started do running every day. So
yeah,
it's just like 1 kilometer, 1.5 kilometers a day.
yeah.
Um,
It's good to start with smaller distances, because the hardest thing is to commit to something that I guess you can't commit, right?
mhm. I
And
mean, yeah, go ahead.
And for me, it's just like if I want to do 5K, I don't want to walk a 5K. I don't want to rock and run. I just want to do it. So building up to it, it's a good way to start.
Mhm. Yeah, so last year I did a half marathon just on my own.
Wow.
I found a 1 kilometer loop in the
Yeah.
neighborhood and just did 21 loops.
Wow.
And yeah, my legs were like
Yeah.
stilts after. Like it was hard to bend. It hurt.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had to take a hot bath.
But it feels
But
good. It feels good though. It feels good.
I feel like I did it. I know I can do it again if I have to. That
Yeah.
kind of feeling. But running is, I love running.
Mhm.
It's it's kind of at the point for me where I just do it. It's fun.
Yeah.
And right now what I'm trying is I'll go for jogs,
Yeah.
but I'm working on my top speed. So I usually, like yesterday, I went for a 1.5 kilometer jog. I'm jogging casually, get warmed up, and then for I don't know what, like 50 meters or something, I'll just sprint and then just come down for a jog.
Okay.
So it's fun. Like
Yeah.
if you ever sprint at top speed, you just feel good. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
right, your arms are like chugging along.
You're not dying from the long distance. You're really working on like yeah, yeah, really working.
I'm trying to get that power just because I feel like it's good long-term health. Like I'm in my 30s already, so I still want some power getting older,
Yeah.
and this will be a good way to do that.
What I typically do is I start on the bike. So I'll go on the bike, I'll do like um well, I'll do like 15 minutes. I'll do like 5 minutes, like 2.5 and 2.5 at the end of just like no resistance. And then I'll increase the resistance and then decrease the resistance back to zero. I like warming up that way for some reason. I don't know why, but I'll warm up like that and then just go out for a jog and see if I can, do it faster.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I found for myself starting with walking or jogging low speed and then picking up, I didn't feel as warmed up for the run, but I mean, I don't know. That's just what I do.
No, it makes sense. Especially if you're trying to work on speed, you want your body hot and like it's warm is a better word. You want it warm and
Yeah.
ready to go so that if you're trying to get more power, your body's already flexible because it's going
Yeah.
to tighten up
Well,
after sprint.
exactly. And the reason why I like that is because for me, I just hop on the bike, get off, right? Do some stretching and then go out for the run and stretch when I come back. And instead of like doing the walking stretches
Right.
or like walking, running, and then stretching and then doing that. But I don't know. One thing I found coming out of COVID, right, is I need to stretch now.
Yeah.
I think what I was 20 or 20, yeah, 20 or 21 when COVID started, and I could go play soccer. Like I played soccer in league until then, and I could just go out onto the pitch and you know, just run. I could run like unlimited cardio, unlimited, muscle recovery without being sore. And when we were allowed to start playing soccer for the first time, when I guess the restrictions were lifted, I was just stumbling over myself. I just started realizing my muscle memory was not where I don't want to say cardio, but where my muscle capacity was at.
Yeah, there's a saying I heard in a podcast somewhere that when professional athletes get older,
Yeah,
they become what's called like a decommissioned athlete. So their muscle memory or like what they're used to in terms of their power is
yeah,
the same. So if they're retired a couple of years and they want to sprint again, for example, they will still try to go for the same power, but
yeah,
their body will just be like, no, and it's just going
yeah,
to give up.
yeah, yeah.
I
That that
think that's what happened,
that is
right?
has 100% happened. And but uh I guess getting older, or yeah, I'm not that old, but getting older, walking's great.
Walking is
That's all
great.
I can say. Walking's great. Yeah. Walking
I
is,
think you have a good strategy, with the warm up on the bike and then going for the jog.
yeah,
It definitely helps. As far as stretching, yeah, that's super important too.
yeah.
I have very tight hamstrings, so
Okay.
I have kind of limited mobility, but stretching is always part of my warm up routine and cool
Yeah,
down routine.
yeah,
But what I do, kind of like what you do, is warm ups are always an active stretch. So
yeah,
they're like, moving
yeah,
around,
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like that. and cool downs are static, where you just lie down and just hold position for a long time.
Yeah.
If you have available to you a bathtub,
Yeah.
you can take hot baths.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe not so much after running, but like if you were doing weightlifting or some kind of
Yeah.
heavy weights, that helps too.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
After running, a cold bath will help for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was, yeah, I was gonna say. I'd rather cold bath after that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, we're talking about all this stuff. How do you do all this while considering work from home?
So I have a personal trainer
Okay.
and I see him twice a week in the gym.
Okay.
So I have a weightlifting plan where we do a full body, a lower body, and an upper body day. And
Okay.
I'm doing heavy weights like, deadlift, squats, those kinds of things, and hip
Yeah.
thrust. That helps me in my running. The running itself, right now, I just do it after work. Like if I'm done at 5, I'll chill for half an hour.
Yeah.
And this week I'm just doing a 1 or 1.5K jog. So it just takes 10 minutes. So
Okay.
I just go for a jog, finish up, come home and chill or go to the gym. It is hard to do it, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
Um, I'm fortunate in that I have some free time outside of work
Yeah.
to get that to work. Um, Actually, like at one point, I was taking a jog during the workday, like as a
Yeah.
break.
Yeah.
So I got
Yeah.
10-minute
I was,
jogs.
I was saying I was thinking if you have 15-minute breaks, go throw on some shorts, go for a jog, come back, and you're good to go.
Yeah, man, there was a point a few months ago where I was doing the gym 3 times a week,
Yeah.
running twice a week, going bouldering every other weekend,
Okay.
and going for a swimming lesson once a week, and then sometimes going in for like a myself to practice.
Yeah.
So honestly, it's like you kind of slowly integrate things into your routine.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
started running has been my part of my routine for years.
Yeah.
Then came weightlifting about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Then I wanted to learn how to swim, so that came in.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then bouldering it's just twice a month, like for an hour on a Saturday or something.
Yeah.
So then it just kind of builds and builds and builds. And I've fallen out of that, because of personal reasons and time constraints, but it can work.
One thing that I tried to do, especially during COVID, I kind of stopped when I went back in person to school for that last year, but I was doing the one punch challenge.
What is that, like 100 push-ups, whatever?
100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats. I didn't do I didn't quite get into the squats part of it, but I would definitely do 100 push-ups a day in my breaks. So get my first break, I would do 25 to 50, and then my second break, I'd do 25 to 50, being my lunch break, and then whatever I didn't do, I'd finish in my third break of the day. And that was really good. I felt normal. So when I don't do the push-ups, I don't quite feel normal. And I'm not big, like I don't have super jacked arms. It's just doing them, having like normal body strength.
Those are good. Like push-up, squats, those will cover like the whole body pretty
Yeah.
much. Um, well, actually, I remembered one good way to keep up with it is I would do monthly challenges with my friend.
Okay.
So um, I think it's been a few months since we did it, but one of the challenges was a push-up competition.
Yeah.
That was just to see who could get the most push-ups in a month or something. But what was more useful was we decided to, I think, we decided to have a target number of reps. So
Mhm.
for example, in 1 month, I think we targeted, let's get 30,000 reps. How
Okay.
you get those reps is up to you.
Yeah.
So we decided, um,
30,000. That's a lot.
yeah. So I mean, it's on how you measure those reps. So we agreed that for me, if I run for 30 minutes, I think it was like every 1 minute of running, let's count it as 100 reps.
Okay,
So
okay.
then 30 minutes would be what, 3,000? That's not right. Maybe it was 50 reps or something like that.
So you could do various exercises under the unit of a rep and then
Yeah,
go.
like a regular, if you do like bench press or bicep curl, each rep is a rep.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, the way we actually got to 30,000 was skipping. Every jump is a rep.
Okay, okay, there you go.
That was the bulk of it. That was like half of the
Hey
reps.
man, but skipping is a good way to it's a good way to exercise. Probably the best way.
This was a good challenge because it forced us to have our own goal,
Yeah,
have a target of meeting the reps, have a 1 month time constraint,
yeah,
and we would have a chat once a week so that we can kind of keep each other on track.
yeah, yeah.
And it was fun. It made it fun. We don't do it all the time now, but every few months we might do something like that.
Well, it's hard, when people get older, have families, different types of situation. It's hard to like stay connected for those kind of things. I know at least with like my friends, like in terms of staying connected like that, we check in on Discord, for example. We just have a server, but being committed like that, it's not easy with everyone's different schedules.
Yeah, it's I would say it's a nice way to actually connect. Like you're right, I don't really connect with this friend that much,
Yeah,
but we had like an hour a week where we would just talk about our progress, and
yeah,
then that was good enough because it's like it's fun. You're working on it throughout the week,
yeah,
and then you have a weekly meeting where you kind of talk about it and say what went wrong, what we could do next, stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But
Cool.
yeah. Anyway,
I
I
think,
think we can end it here.
yeah, yeah, for sure.